One. All right, I'm a high school principal. We have to do better than that. Good afternoon. Welcome to this panel discussion in recognition of National Principals Month. My name is Christine Handy, and I am the president-elect of the National Association of Secondary School Principals and a principal in Montgomery County, Maryland. My colleagues and I are grateful to see so many members of the education policy community gathered here for a deep dive into the role of the principal as states implement their plans under the Every Student Succeeds Act. Our three organizations who are hosting this event live that deep dive every day. The American Federation of School Administrators, the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and the National Association of Secondary School Principals have long shared a common mission: to maximize every bit of student potential in our schools by promoting and supporting high-quality leaders. We've always known that leadership matters. Only recently, though, has leadership become central to both the nation's ed research and ed policy agendas. Most prominently, the Wallace Foundation researched the principal's role for more than a decade. Their conclusion: leadership is second only to instruction in school-based factors that affect student performance. And they went so far as to identify 5 essential domains of the principal's work: shaping a vision of academic success for all students, creating a climate hospitable to education, cultivating leadership in others, improving instruction, and managing people, data, processes to foster school improvement. These findings are codified in the Professional Standards for Educational Leadership. In 2015, the National Policy Board for Educational Administration convened a committee of ed leadership stakeholders, led by NASSP's Deputy Executive Director, Beverly Hutton, to create a new set of standards that are both aspirational and steeped in the realities of school leadership. We gathered input and feedback from thousands of school leaders. With their encouragement, we challenged the field to expand the lens of leadership to capture not just instruction, but matters of social justice, cultural responsiveness, but also the need to focus on those forces that marginalize student populations. So far, 8 states have adopted these standards for all points in the principal's career cycle. From efforts to fill the principal pipeline, which the Wallace Foundation has documented can be done well and inexpensively when done with purpose, to principal formation, to principal evaluation. It's encouraging to see how seriously many states have taken school leadership. And it's also encouraging to see the conversation go global. Last year, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, the folks who bring you the International PISA test every few years, issued a report, School Leadership for Learning. The themes of the report are familiar. In a Huffington Post interview, an OECD official said, quote, "The ingredients that make up an excellent learning environment often vary from school to school, country to country, and culture to culture. But what every school has in common is great leadership," end quote. And why does the principal's work matter so much? The OECD official was asked, quote, "New sets of skills such as teamwork, innovation, and creativity are becoming increasingly important. The leaders of this major transformation can only be the principals and the teachers, but principals need to be able to show the way in this uncertain world, end quote. Ours is a massive responsibility, and the path is riddled with obstacles. None of us in the position are surprised by the Institute for Education Sciences finding that the average high school principal spends 62.5 hours each week on the job, 30% of which is spent on administrative tasks, and I am definitely a witness to that. The expectations are great and not always aligned with how a principal's time can best be used. But when it's executed well, the principalship is the most rewarding job in education today, which is why I have done it for the past 19 years. This is what we celebrate during National Principals Month. Schools and communities throughout the country are hosting countless donut breakfasts and pizza lunches, hopefully accompanied by a gym membership after eating all of that, banners hanging in the hallways, recognizing their principals at school board meetings, and offering many other signs of appreciation simply because National Principals Month gives them an occasion to do so. I have personally enjoyed recognition by our city's mayor and county councils, as well as our superintendent. Our PTA hosted a breakfast, and I've had lunch with my secretary. While principals cherish these celebrations, we can't limit them to the local level. Events like this remind us the bigger conversation we need to have as a nation, and they provide a platform for that conversation about a simple reality we all recognize. An investment in leadership is an investment in learning, because leadership matters. So I thank you for being here today and being a part of our conversation. I would like to now introduce the NAESP President, Brian Parton.
Thank you, Christine, for that introduction and overview of why we are here today. My name is Brian Parton, and in addition to serving as principal of Ross N. Robinson Middle School in Kingsport, Tennessee, I also have the honor of serving as president of the National Association of Elementary School Principals. And I just want to echo your point, Christine. An investment in leadership is an investment in learning. That is why today's discussion on supporting the recruitment, preparation, and training of teachers, principals, and other school leaders is so crucial. Principals are the primary catalysts for creating a lasting foundation for learning in every school, in their school communities. They not only drive school and student performance, they also shape the long-term impact of school improvement efforts. What is more, principals work in partnership with classroom teachers, providing the school-based leadership to improve student achievement, close achievement gaps, and ensure every student is provided a pathway to success. Without recognition and support for principals as the drivers of continuous school improvement, it is virtually impossible to improve school conditions that lead to better instruction in classroom and student learning outcomes. But while the evidence points to increased investment in principal leadership, such support has and continues to wane. Consider, for example, a 2013 sample of how districts use federal funds, which found that only 4% are spent annually on opportunities for principals to engage in professional learning. Further, research by NASP and partner organizations revealed that principals spend less than 1% of their workdays per year in a state or district-sponsored professional development. And almost half of principals in the profession report that their state does not provide tailored professional learning opportunities for principals and other school leaders. This is even while principals have faced a sea change of unprecedented challenges in school leadership, adapting to new college and career-ready standards, aligning pre-K through third grade learning, responding to shifting racial and socioeconomic demographics and ensuring equity for all students, managing educator churn and teacher shortages, just to name a few. These shifts are particularly impactful on the growing group of early career principals. Also, too often, pre-service training leaves principals feeling unprepared for the challenges of the job. Let's take, for example, data from NASP's National Panel for New Principals, which has indicated that in the area of early childhood, only 20% of new principals feel they were well trained in instructional methods and developmentally appropriate perspectives for early education. This void isn't just a concern for new principals. Experienced principals, too, need ongoing development in areas that range from early childhood to technology integration to literacy and instruction. Now, more than ever, principals and school leaders are in need of high-quality professional development. Enter the Every Student Succeeds Act. NASP, along with NASSP and AFSA, worked aggressively on Capitol Hill to help lawmakers understand a very important facet of the educational ecosystem, the importance of leadership. ESSA's professional development provisions, which are described in Title II, aim to help schools provide low-income and minority students with greater access to effective teachers, principals, and other school leaders, and to build the capacity of educators. Notably, the law's definition of professional development integrates the concepts of enabling, and I quote, students to succeed in a well-rounded education. Through the lens of well-rounded education, the new law offers opportunities to address some of the issues that challenge principals the most. Today, we will drill down on those challenges and the ways ESSA can improve school leadership. I would now like to thank you again for being a part of our conversation today and to introduce Doris Reid, who serves as the Executive Director for the American Federation of School Administrators. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Doris Reid, and I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Supervisory and Administrative School Personnel in Prince George's County, Maryland, AFSA Local 109, and I'm also the AFSA affiliate liaison. Over the past few years, AFSA has worked closely with NASSP and NAESP, along with several other national organizations, in advocating for principals and other school leaders. Back in 2015, when Congress adopted the ESSA, we were very pleased that Congress recognized in a bipartisan fashion just how important principals and other school leaders are to student achievement by including an optional 3% set aside in Title II, Part A, for principal-specific professional development. This was an unprecedented opportunity for states and districts to support school leaders, and many states are taking advantage of this provision, as is evidenced by recently filed state ESSA plans. I am proud to say that my home state of Maryland is one of those states. Maryland's plan would require the state, in collaboration with LEAs, to, and I quote, develop a strategy for professional learning for principal supervisors, principals, assistant principals, aspiring principals, and other school leaders aligned with professional standards for educational leaders. In addition, the plan says that the state must provide and support targeted learning opportunities to these school leaders in order to prepare them for implementing evidence-based instructional strategies aligned to student needs. This professional learning is intended to prepare principals and to become strong instructional leaders, provide a system of support through a principal and assistant principal network, provide for continuous professional growth, and assist principals in the development and support of teacher leaders. Maryland's efforts in this area and the efforts of many other states are making very important for a number of reasons. First, principals are critical to the success of a school, and they need to be supported. They are the first ones to arrive in the building and the last ones to leave. They often receive the blame when things go wrong and no credit for success. Second, principals' jobs are different from classroom teachers, and they need professional learning development opportunities that align with their job requirements. The 3% set aside recognizes the distinction and supports separate professional development for them. Third, principals deserve to have a say in their professional development planning and how education is delivered in their schools. I am encouraged that the state ESSA plans have been developed in consultation with principals. Their input is essential. They are the ones on the ground, and they know what their schools need, what works, and what doesn't work. With all of that said, and all the policy advancements that have been made, I am still very concerned about whether Title IIA and the 3% set aside may not receive any funds. President Trump and the House have proposed to eliminate funding for Title IIA completely. This could not come at a worse time or be more ill-advised. Thankfully, the Senate has since voted to restore funding for Title II. We are very hopeful that the House and Senate will agree to restore this funding by the December 8th deadline. Today, you will hear directly from principals and other stakeholders in the field. They will talk about their experiences in working on their state ESSA plans, why providing principals with their support and professional development they need is critical, and why Title II Part A must be fully funded. I would like to thank everyone for being here today and for your support of principals and other school leaders. I will now turn it over to my union member, John Paul.
Good afternoon, everyone. Come on, good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everyone here. If I could have my panel members come and get seated while I get started. As before I start, I'd like to thank NASSP, NAESP, and the American Federation of Administrators for providing me the opportunity to lead this timely and critical conversation. As we know that states are continuing to draft their ESSA plans, and we know that there remains an opportunity for meaningful consultation. That meaningful consultation comes in the form of educators providing some input on proven strategies that are designed to help enhance the educational climate and conditions of schools for all students. Last year, I had the opportunity of serving at the Department of Ed as a Principal Ambassador Fellow, and that was the greatest opportunity to be immersed in the work around ESSA and all of the work that is being done with these great organizations such as NASSP, NAESP, and the American Federation of School Administrators. And I think that it's something that is sometimes lost when it gets down to the schoolhouse. And I think that these types of conversations are pivotal and critical as we make sure that the people who are tasked with the work are aware of the policies, the laws, and the provisions that are available to them to get the work done. So as we talk about a lot of things, we always know what the what is. And it's interesting to know what. We know that there's teacher shortages. We know that there's turnover rates. We know that there's a need for training. We know the what's. The challenge is getting to the why. The why is what moves us. The why is what empowers us. The why is what frames our decisions, and it provides the emotional impetus for us to act. So as we delve into the why today, I'm joined by an exceptional panel of educators to tackle some of these topics. First is Gary Kipp. You can raise your hand there you go. Gary is in his 15th year as executive director, as the executive director of the Association of Washington School Principals, which represents 3,400 K-12 principals and assistant principals throughout the state of Washington. He has also served as an assistant superintendent, high school and middle school principal, and teacher. He also serves on the NASSP State Executive Director Advisory Committee. Welcome, Gary. Next, we have Principal DeBrosia. There you go. This is his third year at Arthur Middleton Elementary in Charles County, Maryland. He has also worked as a vice principal, and he was named Charles County Vice Principal of the Year in 2015. He has served as a special educator, team leader, and a high school football coach. He has a BA and MS in elementary education and special education from Mercyhurst University. He also has a certificate of advanced study in education focused in school administration from Notre Dame of Maryland University. Lewis is a member of the National Association of Elementary School Principals and is the president-elect of the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals. Welcome, Principal D'Ambrosia. Steve Baker. Principal Baker is from Metropolitan School District in Bluffton-Harrison in Indiana. He has served prior to being a principal, he was a high school math teacher, and he was a middle school assistant principal. He has currently served in his role for 18 years. No, 18 years. As an 18-year principal, his school has received a 4-star award 4 times since 2010. He is also a member of the Indiana Association of School Principals, and for the past 21 years, he is currently serving as the executive board of directors. Steve also serves as the National Association of Secondary School Principals State Coordinator and as a liaison with the Indiana State Department of Education. Back in 2012, not surprisingly, Steve was named the Indiana High School Principal of the Year. Welcome, Principal Baker. Last but not least, we have Principal Monique Lamar. Dr. Lamar is the principal of Calverton Elementary School, located in Beltsville, Maryland. She has been a principal for the past 8 years, and in governing her work, she has earned her doctorate in education in educational leadership and policy studies from Howard University. She's a national conference presenter, and she also serves as an NAESP certified principal mentor for first and second year principals. She truly enjoys the work of supporting the growth and development of novice teachers in Prince George's County Public Schools. Welcome, Principal Lamar. So as we get started, we are live streaming, and we are also carrying on the conversation via Twitter. So those of you following us online, please make sure that you are tweeting any questions or comments or thoughts to #ThankAPrincipal. So let's get started. So as we come together to celebrate National Principals Month, what is the one thing that policy lawmakers should know about the principalship? Anyone is open to start.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to all the staff members and everyone who came here today. I know that takes time out of your busy schedule. My daughter was a staff member for Congressman Russell for some years, and I know she sat in these meetings. So thank you for coming to these meetings and wanting to be part of this discussion. We greatly appreciate that. If I could sum up that question just in one sentence, and excuse my grammar, it ain't what it used to be. I did become an administrator 22 years ago. This is my 19th year as a high school principal, and I will tell you, when I became a principal, it was really more in the area of being a manager, focusing on curriculum instruction and assessment. That is not the case anymore. A good part of my day now works directly with students, student needs and their families. Worrying about things like where their next meal will come from, paying utilities so their electricity does not get shut off, things that I never learned in my graduate work of becoming a principal. It has changed more rapidly than I think than any other career, and one that we must stay on top of if we want to help all the needs of all of our students.
Piggybacking on what my colleague said, I want you to think about one position that requires someone to be a human resources manager, a fiscal manager, a grants manager, someone who can advocate for children, someone who can advocate for adults, someone who knows instruction, someone who can analyze data, think strategically, someone who can conduct an observation, someone who can shape a vision, guide a vision, champion a vision, and someone who can do that in one day, plus care for all of the students that are in their building, all of the teachers, and the community that they serve. That is a principal.
A few years ago, Paul Manna did some research on the principalship and policies that support the principalship, and his conclusion was that principals are the multipliers of effective instruction. And when you think about it that way, and you're thinking about investment and return on investment, then investing into principal development seems like a no-brainer. The other thing that I would like policymakers to know is that principals are critical to implementing the policies that policymakers create. And so it might be good to listen to them before the policies are created.
All right, Principal D'Ambrosio.
The only thing I would add in addition to how eloquently all my colleagues spoke is that we do these things not only during school hours, but before and after school, nights, weekends. And as a parent, it's important to me to see my child's principal, who's one of my colleagues in Charles County, there at the events. So there's an expectation even from us upon our colleagues about how much time we put in all the time, it seems. I know us just sitting here before the panel, we're all a little antsy because we're not used to being in one spot at one time for so long. And, you know, that we kind of calmed each other down, but honestly, it's all the time, and we really care and worry about the children that are in our charge.
Excellent. So specifically, this question is to Steve and Gary. You both played a very important role in developing your state's ESSA plan. Can you please explain how you and other stakeholders were engaged during this process? And what were your state's plans to continue the work with educators throughout the plan's implementation?
Well, I can share that in Washington State, our state superintendent divided the plan or the potential of the plan into 9 different subcommittees, and we had principals and a number of other stakeholders on each one of those committees. And then we had a large committee that tried to put all of it together. And the committee was a little too large, but there was stakeholder involvement for sure. And that plan then, I served on one of those committees and the large coordinating committee. That plan went to the state superintendent to confirm, and then we shifted state superintendents. So a new one was elected. We elect them in our state. And so we decided not to submit it until the new superintendent could come in and look at it. And the stakeholders met with the new superintendent to talk about how much was invested in the plan. He made a few tweaks, but signed off on it and sent it in. And that stakeholder group is continuing to work on making sure that the plan is implemented with fidelity over the course of the term of the plan.
Indiana was very intentional and focused in their gathering information for their ESSA plan. They took it very seriously. It was led by our superintendent of public instruction, Dr. Jennifer McCormick. Senior Department of Ed staff traveled around the state. They held 9 meetings, literally in every corner in the state of Indiana and in between, over 2 months. Over 400 people attended those meetings. Administrators, teachers, parents, community members all participated, took the feedback, put it into the ESSA plan, and not just for the ESSA plan, but also how to help students and to serve them better. Then, from there, the Department of Ed took 4 working groups, and principals were invited to serve on all 4 of these committees. So we're very thankful. We have a great working relationship with our Department of Education, and she allows us to be part, what we say, she allows us to sit at the table on all of these important decisions. And those 4 very important committees were accountability, which obviously ESSA relates to directly. I was a part of that committee. Assessment, supporting excellent educators, and supporting all students. We met 4 times, and from there, helped draft the ESSA plan. So principals were directly involved in the writing of the ESSA plan for the state of Indiana, and which is very important because we'll also be instrumental in implementing the plan of ESSA in the state of Indiana, which we are now taking the next strides to make sure that that happens.
Excellent. All right, so our next question is, most states are relying on Title II Part A funding to improve educator quality and school performance, and describing such efforts in their ESSA plans. But President Trump and Secretary DeVos have called the program ineffective and proposed to completely eliminate the $2.1 billion in funding in FY18. How would the elimination of these funds affect your state plan or your role as a principal? We'll start with Principal D'Ambrosio.
Okay. I think the loss of these Title IIA funds, and this was kind of spoken on a little bit in the beginning address of the Maryland ESSA plan, will directly impact us. And as a principal, I think it'll hit us fourfold. Our supervisors won't be able to receive the PD opportunities. We, of course, will not. Our vice principals and assistant principals and the aspiring leaders and the teachers. But ultimately, and most concerning to me, is that students won't benefit from these lack of professional development opportunities without these funds. So in order for them to continue to receive an education worthy of the American education spirit, I believe these funds are crucial, and it's just gonna make our role as a principal that much harder if they aren't there.
Principal Lamar.
In addition to what my colleague alluded to, one thing that's really important, and my district uses the funds, is to help support our novice principals. As stated in my biography, in my bio, I am a certified principal. I'm a certified mentor principal, and that's beneficial to the novice principals coming into the district. They need to know that they can have someone that they can call on that's going to be there for them, that's going to support them, that's going to help probe their thinking, that's going to act as their coach and their cheerleader in a non-evaluative form. That's really important. Then the professional development that I receive just as a mentor principal, we have to get recertified, and just brushing up on my skills as a mentor and as a coach is really important. I can use those skills to coach novice principals, but then I can also use those skills to coach teacher leaders. I think as a principal, it's really important for us to begin to build our teacher leaders to be the next leaders in our field.
Again, let's be honest with each other. What group and organization doesn't want some of the piece of the pie, right? And so when somebody says they're going to cut that pie, that piece of the pie, people start to take notice. And obviously, we are just as focused and intentional and serious about that $2.1 billion out of Title II Part A as other organizations are. I get that. I get that. There's only so much money to go around. But here's the key with that. It is my opinion that education is the foundation which all other careers are made possible. And if you cut the foundation, you hurt all other careers that people want to go into. If we don't have great schools, then it would be very hard to have people coming out of there to take great careers and steps toward what they want to do. So we're not asking money so that we can get raises. Title II Part A is very intentional. It's professional development. We all know that the number one person in a building that drives a culture is the principal. And without great culture, things will not grow in our buildings. If we cut professional development, very little will be said about it, because we'll just, you know what principals do? We just get our job done. We always get our job done. But it's the lifeblood of what we do. And we'll start to notice, because without professional development, young principals coming along will not get the nurturing they need, the mentoring that they need. And pretty soon we start to figure out, and we wonder why things aren't happening in the schools the way they used to. And remember that foundational to all things is the education that we get while we spend in those years in our building. So I get it. The money is necessary all over the place, and I understand President Trump's reasoning. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. But I'm here today to tell us if we cut that funding, we will see the negative effects of it in the very short term.
Well, thank you, Principal Baker. Gary?
folks on the panel have talked about the complexity of the work of the principal, and I think if you look at teaching and principalizing, those are two occupations that can't be learned completely in pre-service. You've got to get in and do the work and learn while you're doing the work. And one of the challenges that we have at the administrative level is that the game tends to change annually. And so we need to be retooling constantly in terms of developing our own skills. In our state, and I can talk about it a little bit later, drastic changes were made in the teacher and principal evaluation system that required us to retool. If there's no opportunity for principals to have professional development, there's no way that those policies can be put into place effectively. And so there are a lot of words I could use to describe the notion of not moving forward with funding for professional development. Short-sighted seems to be the one that comes to my mind, and counterproductive.
Okay. So as ESSA allows states a new opportunity to reserve 3% of their Title II funds, especially for school leader professional development, 24 states took advantage of this, including Washington and Indiana. Steve and Gary, can you both elaborate on, going back to the why your states chose to reserve these funds? Gary?
We were in a great place in Washington because the spotlight was already on the principalship. We had just come through policy changes, as I said before, in teacher and principal evaluation, and the teachers union in the state, the superintendent's association, the PTA, we're all looking at the principalship to see, because that's the linchpin on effectively implementing this drastic kind of change. And so we had already been looking at what can we do in terms of increasing the skills and talents of the principal in relationship to this particular expectation. We have new expectations that we knew were on the horizon in terms of discipline strategies and suspending fewer students, and that's a real shift for existing principals to figure out brand new ways to help kids stay in school and at the same time helping them with their behavior. And so we were fortunate to have a lot of attention towards the principalship. So it was not heavy lifting, but we did need to look at, so where does the money go if it's not set aside? It would go to the school districts. And we had I was sat on the committee that was called the Effective Educator Committee, and it was that committee that made the recommendation on the 3% set aside, and we had 4 superintendents that were sitting on that committee. And in our discussions, we came to the conclusion that the money is better spent at the state level than sending it out to 292 different school districts who would get a small piece of the pie, and so small that it would be ineffective. But retaining it at the state level, we could put together some significant programs that we could implement statewide. So it was just a money management decision. Once we knew that it was important to focus on the principal, then it was simply a matter of how do we best spend that money.
Mr. Baker?
A recent article in the NESSP Principal Update, which I read every day, part of my morning reading. Thank you. Yeah. An article came out because it was from Indiana, and a study was done. 141 school districts were surveyed. 94% said they had a teacher shortage this current school year. Mostly it was in special education, science, and math, and that's not a new thing. 92% in 2016 said they had a shortage, and 95% in 2015. So in Indiana, it's a real thing. This is not something that's made up in the media. We're trying to get anyone's attention. At Bluffton, Harrison, even we experience that every time we have an opening. We know that to find good teachers will be sometimes a struggle. So I'm very proud of the state of Indiana and Dr. McCormick for what she did in her ESSA plan, and I'll just take a minute to explain what they did. They were very intentional to address the teacher shortage in the state of Indiana. Part of their ESSA plan is called Recruitment and Retention Campaign. and they want to take Title II Part A money that may be cut to use to recruit, prepare, develop teachers and address the teacher shortage in the state of Indiana. It's a 5-step process: recruitment, preparation, induction, evaluation, advancement, and retention. And a lot of that has to do with professional development and principals being a part of that. People think, well, just getting a teacher in the building and then you win. No, we lose teachers as fast as we get them sometimes in the state of Indiana, across the state, and really across the country. So we've got to learn how to keep them. That's why professional development is key, and that's why being a principal, the key role that we have in working with teachers is not just to train them, but to keep them, and to keep them engaged and make sure that they don't lose the reason why they became a teacher. So Indiana in particular is relying on Title II Part A monies so key stakeholders have the leverage to evaluate, support the systems. As Gary said, the state of Indiana wants to lead this, not spread the money out. I think we have about 200 or so school districts in the state of Indiana, so we're going to centralize this from the Department of Education that really will attack the problem of the teacher shortage in Indiana and utilize that money. And specifically, we talk about the 3% set aside. That will be the teacher leader component of this, and that's that bridge a lot of times from teacher to principal that is sorely needed in today's education.
Okay, thank you. Lewis, can you please explain what kind of unique challenges our early childhood educators face and how professional development can help them deal with these challenges?
Okay. I'd gladly debate with anyone that the early childhood teaching position is the toughest position in education. Starting on day one, we have students that are, for the first time ever, coming into schools. There are parents who don't want to let their babies go, and they're literally clinging to the windows at times, you know, to making sure that their baby's taken care of, and we assure them we do that. But those aren't the kind of things, those assurances delivered by a brand new teacher that make parents feel that we actually are going to do those things. So professional development just in how to deal with parents. As my colleague said earlier, with all the hats that principals wear, teachers do the same. The early childhood teachers, they're curriculum specialists, they're healthcare providers, they're family counselors, they're program managers, they have to be mental health experts, child advocates, nutritional specialists. The opioid crisis is not leaving the school system out. Our early childhood teachers deal with all these things, and everyone likes to throw around the gap, especially, you know, policy things come out, they like to throw around the achievement gap. We have children walking through our doors that never set foot in school before that are already in a gap based on things that are going on. And, you know, the working role of moms now, that has changed how we deal with younger kids. There's a lot, and I mean, without professional development, it's going to be terrible for the school system. I don't see it as something we can do without, and that's why I was so happy to be asked to come here today and speak on this.
Thank you. Principal Lamar, how does professional development opportunities better educators in aiding underserved populations?
So there's not one-size-fit-all programs for principals or teachers. There are different pathways to the principalship. There are different pathways to becoming a certified teacher. Professional development is needed because you have a building full of people that have a myriad of experiences. My building, for example, there is a large ESOL population in my building. I may have a teacher who went through a wonderful program but didn't take a lot of classes in their during their undergraduate program if they have a degree in education around language acquisition. That teacher is in front of students. That teacher is looking at me for guidance. If I don't understand language acquisition, how am I ever going to help build the capacity of the teachers that's in my building? So professional development is a necessity for me as an instructional leader, so then I am able to actually guide the teachers that are in my building. When you're looking at children that are impoverished, we know that poverty comes with a whole framework of concerns. There are health issues. There are children that come with so many hours less of reading. They may have a lower vocabulary. Their vocabulary development may not be the same as their middle-class counterparts. Teachers that come with a middle-class perspective really need professional development and understanding how to meet the needs of children that are impoverished. When you look at children who come to schools and they don't have prior care, and that could be something that's cultural. It might not be because parents couldn't afford to send them. It just could be that the parents want the children with them. Well, when you have a child that's in kindergarten that doesn't have any prior experience, the teacher has to have a skill set to be able to make the child feel comfortable, make the student feel comfortable, and then we're asking the teacher to grade papers, publish grades, talk to parents, do conferences, get on Classroom Dojo, make sure they're tweeting out, make sure that they have their breaks, and they have to do all of this in a small amount of time. So really providing targeted professional development to meet the needs of the teachers in the building is of the utmost importance. That, when you're looking at my colleagues, for example, so yes, I've been a principal for 8 years, but I have colleagues that have been principals for 30 years. I am, per se, a digital native, but some people are digital immigrants and some people are afraid of technology. But that is something that is not going away. So some of my colleagues may need professional development around how to integrate educational technology in their building to meet the needs of their students. Without funds to provide targeted professional development for the teachers and the principals, our students are not going to get what they need to prepare them for careers that haven't even been created yet.
Okay. That was deep. So to delve a little deeper into that, this next question is for everyone on the panel, because we've talked a lot about the different hats that the principal wears, the cultural context of what it means to be a principal in this day and age. So how has the principalship changed over, say, the past decade? And how has professional development helped you evolve as a leader to handle these changes? We'll start with Gary.
Well, I mentioned a little bit earlier about the change in expectations on how we deal with kids that are struggling in school behaviorally. I was a principal a number of years ago at the high school level, and it was fairly economical of my time to suspend a student who had created an infraction. With that out the window, which it sort of is in our state, trying to correct the behavior is a large-scale issue. First of all, as a principal, I've got to figure out how do I help teachers rethink all of the notion that if you just get this kid out of my class, I can teach. Those days are gone. So how do I get the teacher retooled so that they have the skills and talents to be able to teach in a different way? How do I retool the community who expects the old way of doing things? I'm basically, as a principal, trying to transform the attitudes of kids, teachers, parents, and community members on just that one topic. In our state, the principal's role in terms of supervising teachers is drastically different than when I was a principal. We're looking much more at the results. How are kids doing? Not just subgroups, but that kid. How's that kid doing? And what are you doing as a principal to help that teacher help that kid? And we've gotten very specific about results. That takes a different kind of leader than I had to be when I was a principal. The principalship has changed, in my mind, dramatically. There are many other specific things that have changed in the principal's life to cause them to lead differently. Michael Fullen describes the transition as becoming the lead learner, that the principal is leading the learning in the building, which is an interesting thing to think about when you think about we're going to take all of your learning money away. If you're the lead learner, but there's no opportunity to learn or no support for that learning, it all falls away. So there are other, I'll pass on to others about their perspectives about how the principalship has changed in the last 5 years.
Principal D'Ambrosio.
Yeah, the term even principals from principal teacher. And if we're taking, these funds are cut, you're taking, the ability for us to teach. I mean, professional development for teachers primarily is delivered by principals. So if that's not there for us, it's not there for them. And the political engine changes so fast. I mean, even in my short term as a principal, we've No Child Left Behind, Common Core, now we're college and career readiness standards. These vast changes trickle down to how we deliver things to students in the classroom. And it seems like just when we're getting a grasp on how to function under these changes, the rules change the game again. And without being able to get funds to help us learn the new rules and teach them to our teachers, to teach them to the kids, we don't have the opportunities that we're going to need to be successful.
Principal Lamar.
New math. That's what my parents talk about all the time. What is this new math? If I'm not able to articulate the importance of building a conceptual understanding around math to my parents, and then really have in-depth conversations with my teachers around building a conceptual understanding for math, implementing the standards for mathematical practice, making sure that you're building automaticity. If I'm not able to lead those conversations with my teachers, how can I move my building forward? The writing expectation for children. I mean, basically, they're expecting children to write a dissertation, and that's difficult. So really, the expectation for principals is for us to build our toolkit so that we are constantly able to engage our teachers in the work, constantly staying abreast of what research is saying are best practices, so then we can turnkey that to our teachers, because my teachers are tired. They work really hard. And I have to be able to be their biggest cheerleader, so they have to know that I am engaged in the work with them. They need to know that they can have conversations with me, and if there's something they're not clear about, if I don't know it, that I have a skill set to be able to go find out for them. So I believe that that is a part of my role as a principal that has changed, where before you could just look and say, hey, I'm the lead curriculum person and this is what it is. But it's not that anymore. Also being able to really read, analyze, and disaggregate data is really important, because now we have to align whatever it is we're doing to the dollars that we're spending. And it has to all line up. So for us to be able to actually analyze the data and make strategic decisions and strategically plan for our buildings is a skill set that I know initially when I started as an assistant principal, we really didn't necessarily have to have. But now there's a higher level of accountabilities. For principals, for teachers, and for students. And I think that that's a change. So for my professional development, my district is doing a lot around us looking at a problem of practice and taking a case study approach to creating solutions based on the demographics of our building. So we're basically in cadres, and we spend a year of learning. And we started during our Leadership Institute, and we're continuing that through our systemic principles meetings. And without us just having those collegial conversations with one of my colleagues to say, what are you doing? Because I don't know. To not have that would really be problematic for us.
Thank you. Principal Baker.
You know, this is looks like a pretty young crowd out there today, and I look out there, you probably say, you know what, I didn't even really know my principal, so what's the big deal? I did just fine in high school. Believe it or not, back in 1981, I was the same way. I didn't really even know my high school principal. I knew his name, but I don't think I ever had a conversation with him, and really didn't need to. Why? Because my parents told me I needed to go to school, and told me I needed to do homework, and told me I needed to do my best at all things. That was 1981. 1985, I go to college, and I really learned how to teach math, not teach students. And that's not the college's fault. That's the way it was in 1985. And I learned how to teach math, and I did it for 11 years. Now, at Bluffton High School, we don't talk about teaching social studies, teaching math. We talk about teaching students at all times. And that's what's changed over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We now teach students. I'm very fortunate to work in a district where my superintendent, who is here today, by the way, along with his wife, vacationing in D.C., and they took time to come to this panel, so you know that this is a very important panel. Everybody's looking around to see who he is. I'm very fortunate to work in a school system that they take professional development very seriously. So we have engaged in Ruby Payne's work of a framework for understanding poverty. Dr. Ruby Payne, I will tell you this, it has changed my perception of education and what I do as a leader and why I'm still, after 30-some years, still in education. And our superintendent is leading us through that, and it has changed the way we do school at Bluffton. For example, my colleagues have said it very well. We don't lead instruction, we lead students. And that means sometimes last week that I go to a home of a student who's refusing to come to school. In the old days, I'd say, get to school, period. And when you get to school, there's going to be punishment waiting for you. That's not the case. Now it is, we really got to find out why aren't you coming to school? And we dove deeper into that and found out there's a real problem there. And now we're providing services and helping that family so that that child can do school. Because they're bringing more and more and more needs with them than ever before. At Bluffton, where I came, 1985, our free and reduced rate was around 10 to 12%. Now we'll be over 50% this year. And that's not a great number, a large number. Many of my colleagues live in districts where that percentage is much higher, but we're seeing that percentage grow, and that means the needs grow as well. So we are no longer teaching subjects, we're teaching students, and without professional development, I would tell you that our students will fall through the cracks. They're the ones who will be the losers.
So following up on Principal Baker, as many of the panel members have discussed, professional development and training seems to be a pivotal point for making things work within the school and within the school community. So if anyone could just take a couple of seconds to elaborate on some of the specific professional development activities that you're doing in your schools or in your district that are being funded through federal funding or through district funding. Yeah,
I'll talk about what's going on in our district specifically with student engagement. If you're, as principals, and I think teachers know this pretty well, but if you're trying to just deliver information, Google is going to put us out of business pretty fast. So what we need to do is engage our students. A lot of our students are very technologically savvy, and their attention span is, based on the next video and how fast they can switch the screen. So we're doing a lot with engagement and teaching total participation techniques, and this has been ongoing in our system. And these professional developments, we got to catch up the new teachers who are new to our system. So these ongoing funds are used for teachers and for us. Our associate superintendent starts every principals meeting with new strategies for us to deliver to our teachers. And it's great because we know now in our meeting, the first thing we're gonna do is get to play something that, that we'll be able to deliver to our students and our teachers. So I really look forward to those monthly meetings because I know that I'm gonna build on my knowledge base, and that those monies come from these Title II funds. That's where that money comes from. And I mean, these are the things we use. So,
our district is a participant in SAMS. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but that is really helpful in the role of a principalship because you could go into your office and you could have intentions of doing an observation, calling a parent, and then fires come and you don't meet your to-do list at all. So we have invested in creating SAMS schools, and now we have a district-wide licensure. So our district utilized Title II funds to purchase a SAMS district licensure to really help us manage time effectively so that we're actually getting to the things that matter most in our buildings. In addition to that, as a district, our principals are looking at Trust Matters. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but really understanding the 5 facets of trust is important, and building a culture of trust in your district as well as in your building as a leader is important. So I've turnkey that that same level of training into my building. So with my leadership team, we are talking about trust and why that's important, how as teacher leaders, you need to build trust with the teachers, and teachers need to build trust with the parents and the students. So just creating that culture is really important for us. So that's how the Title II funds have been used in my district.
You heard me talk about Ruby Payne and a framework for understanding poverty, but specifically, because I really love that professional development time, but specifically how Title II Part A is being used in our school district is in the area of mentoring. It's something that we had from the state level, unfortunately, because kind of the same conversations we're having right here. Those funds were cut, so we lost our mentoring programs all throughout the state of Indiana, and I will tell you that hurt Indiana, and we're still recovering from that. I'm not here to preach, but I hope that the federal government kind of learns from that. When mentoring was cut through funding for education, we saw the effects of that immediately. So Title II Part A in our district, we use for mentoring beginning teachers, beginning administrators, providing that one-on-one essential relationship, again, not just to attract, but retain teachers and administrators in the field using that Title II Part A.
Gary?
I'm not in a school district, excuse me, and so I can't speak to how it's used, or the Title II money flows to the school district. It's used in a number of different ways, but I will second what Steve said, and that is that we are getting some of our best feedback from principals about the teacher mentoring programs that are going on. I think a number of them are funded by Title II, and we are starting to advocate for mentoring at the state level, whether we use the 3% set aside or state dollars for mentoring of principals. The work is so complex that it's perfect profession for accelerating skill development through a mentor program.
All right. So a lot of what we talked about in terms of professional development, it really looks at the teachers and the school leaders. But if you all could just take a moment and discuss how professional development helps to ensure better equity among students in your school. Principal Baker?
Yeah, that's a great point because education, in my opinion, is the greatest leveler of all. The ground is level in the feet of education. Again, when you teach students, it doesn't matter where you come from or who you are or where what your last name is or what side of the tracks you grew up. Education is the great equalizer, and that's what we try to provide again. And I keep saying it, the Ruby Payne Understanding Poverty framework is essential to that. But it has allowed us, and this is the key for equity, in my opinion, it has allowed us not to make excuses for students, but to understand students, to meet them where they are, and to provide assistance for each student where they are instead of just a blanket, this will work for all children. One situation will cover all, and that's just not true. So in order to be equitable, you have to have professional development that meets students where they are and not what we think education is about, which is sometimes it deals more with, how do we say, where students come from, where they perceive themselves. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had in my office about students, how they view themselves because of where they come from. And that is heartbreaking to principals. And I think equity is the key for success in those students' lives because they have to understand it doesn't matter where you're from, it matters where you're going, and we want to help you get there. And that's what, in my opinion, is the role of an effective leader.
Principal D'Ambrosia?
I would echo a lot of those sentiments. That was very well said. With equity amongst our students, I believe that the professional development does equate to an equal level, equal playing ground. Specifically in our school, we look at where all students are achieving and we understand the target number that we're getting to, but we're teaching students, we're not teaching curriculum. And professional development provides us with the ability and resources and know how to do that. So that, again, these funds are crucial for what we want to do.
Principal Lamar?
I think the first thing that's most important is really making sure that everybody understands what equity really is. Really meeting students where they are and giving them what they need so there's not a one-size-fits-all. You're going to do that through differentiation of instruction. When we have teachers in front of students that don't understand how to differentiate for their needs, that does a disservice to the students. And it also does a disservice to teachers if we're unable to, first of all, have conversations around equity, have conversations around deficit thinking, because sometimes deficit thinking is a driver around not being able to differentiate instruction for students based on what they need. I think that when we're looking at professional development, and it could be on either spectrum, it could be on a spectrum where TAG, for example. My school won an EGATE award in the state of Maryland for excellent and gifted education, but my teachers had to receive professional development on how to meet the needs of gifted students. There's this misconception around giftedness as if it's just those students are extra smart, and it's not. Gifted students need a specialized approach to their teaching and their learning. Teachers need professional development to be able to do that. As an administrator, I need to be able to recognize that. Around language acquisition, we give this assessment called the WIDA. You get these results back across 4 different language domains, and then you just say a child is a 1.2. What exactly does that mean? If I don't understand how to analyze the WIDA assessment data, utilize the can-do indicators in order to differentiate my instruction from my students, I have children who are acquiring a second language, maybe not getting the things they need because I don't understand how to differentiate my instruction for them. So when we're looking at professional development, there's just such a wide range around what teachers need and what students need. And in order for us to do that, we need the funding. It's of the utmost importance.
Got it. Gary?
Well, you've heard from these 3 about the complexity of the student population that we are trying to educate today and the expectation that we are to educate each and every one of them. You can't learn how to do that in a pre-service program. Even in the best university, it's just folly to think that you can understand how to do that work in a university program that for the most part is set aside from the classroom. You have to be in the classroom learning as you are teaching how to approach kids differently from the other, one class differently, one from the other. It just has to be learned on the job. Unless we're going to make pre-service 8 or 10 years. If we're not willing to do that, then we'd better figure out how to have a robust professional development program so that we can learn on the job. To me, it's so simple. It's right there in front of us, the imperative nature of this.
All right. So at this point, we will transition to now start taking questions from the audience. Zach is coming around with the microphone.
Well, I actually have a couple from the Twitterverse already here. So
Oh.
we do have a couple people tweeting already for our panel. So there are 2 in a row that kind of go hand in hand here. Would love to hear how the panel thinks Title II funds can be used to diversify the principal pipeline. And going along with that, the teacher profession is mostly female. Why is the principal profession mostly male? How can states encourage change? So kind of how do we get more diversity into the pipeline, and how do we diversify the occupation of principals?
Principal D'Ambrosio?
Well, I can address the latter part of that first question, and I'm actually sitting in for a female principal that couldn't make it. So I see a lot of female principals at the elementary level, less male principals actually is what I see. But as far as professional development to diversify the pipeline, I know in our county we do a lot with aspiring leaders, and we set up, extra hours, I should say, after hours programs for our aspiring leaders, and we've actually, implemented administrative assistants where they are basically still teaching part of the day but doing administrative work the other part of the day. So that's some embedded professional development through that program in Charles County.
Principal Lamar?
In terms of diversifying the principalship, I see a lot of, just what my colleague said, a lot of female principals, especially at the education, at the elementary level. So I'll speak really to the principal pipeline in my district. We have several programs for our principal pipeline. Once we have our assistant principals, once they are an assistant principal, they have APIP 1 and APIP 2, which is very specific focused professional development on helping to prepare them for developing their voice as an assistant principal, really understanding the work of the assistant principal. Once they've been in APIP 1 and APIP 2, they can then move forward into a program called ALPS, which is another program for assistant principals that are really aspiring to be principals. We also have a resident principal program that has a standing assistant principal where they go and work under a principal, a high-performing principal, and then at a certain part of the year, that high-performing principal goes to central office, and the resident principal takes over and really gets a hand-on experience in the work, and that's very specific and germane to my district, so that's our principal pipeline. And really the goal would be now, hopefully, to begin to look at the teacher leadership level, so how can that teacher leadership level feed into the principal pipeline?
Principal Baker.
You know, in our corporation, we're 50% female and male in our building level administrators. In my building, I have an assistant principal who's female, guidance, male and female as well, so we're very balanced there, which is very good. But to answer the question specifically, Indiana's doing something new. It's about 2 to 3 years old, and it's called the Indiana Principal Leadership Institute. And it's exactly for that reason. We want to branch out, and we want to recruit the best. And sometimes the best don't want to be, they don't think they're the best. So we want to go out and recruit them. I think sometimes education is looked at as, well, if I can't do this, then I'll do education. And I look at exactly the opposite. I want the top 10% of every graduate of the high schools going right back into education. In order to do that, we have to recruit them. Male, female, every background that we can get together. You know why? Because that's who our students are. We need to reflect our students. And so, again, through professional development, we've been able to do this in Indiana, the IPLI, and we are recruiting a great diverse system of principals and teacher leaders in the state of Indiana.
I would agree with Principal D'Ambrosio that, at least in our state, the imbalance gender-based is elementary versus secondary. So it's not across the board. We've been working very hard in our state to try to increase the number of principals of color. And we've worked and unsuccessfully. And when we look at the teacher population, we realize that the number of principals of color, the percentage is actually greater than the teaching population. And so our conclusion is we've got to get to kids in high school. We've got to get to freshmen in college and find out why are they not picking education as a major. So our state's Learning First Alliance is funding a study that's going on right now, actually, with focus groups in high schools, surveys to find out kids' perceptions about education as a major. Because unless we can crack that, the pipeline doesn't exist for us, at least it hasn't, to increase the diversity of our principal ranks. We've got to get down to kids in school and try to understand better why they are not picking, we have some assumptions, but why are they not picking education as a major?
Next question.
Since I was closest to Zach, I got the microphone.
Nice.
John Bernstein, I'm here representing AFSA today. I was curious, because I do a lot of work in this area, how has technology changed your jobs, for good or for ill? I'm just curious to hear both sides of that.
Let's start with Principal Baker.
Yeah, it's a great question. In our corporation, Bluffton Harrison, we're what we'd call a small school district, about 1,600 students in our district. We're one of the first in the entire state of Indiana to go one-to-one technology, K through 12, and we're using iPads. And so that's a great question for this reason. when that was brought to me by my superintendent, I first of all looked at him and I very politely and professionally said, "Are you crazy?" But as it turned out, he was right. And but what we did was we didn't focus on technology. And so I do want to bring it back to professional development because I do these talks all over the state of Indiana. At Bluffton High School, we talked about the culture where things can grow. Because in that year, we did one-to-one technology. We also had a new evaluation system, a new compensation system, and a few other things sent to us from the feds and the state that we had to get ready for. So without principal leadership, growing the culture, technology, in my opinion, will not have the chance it needs to. Because of technology, not because of technology, but a technology integrated with everything else we do in Bluffton. Like I said, we are very successful. We've been an A-rated high school for the 8 out of the last 9 years, 4-star school, and technology has only helped us with that. So we do iPads with that, but we did a whole family educational activity where we brought families in and we talked to them about the importance of technology. We'll have some people saying technology is bad, and here's my view on that. Technology is not good or bad. It's neutral. It's what we do with it. And our kids are exposed to it every single day, and they'll be exposed to it once they leave our schools. So why not bring them up in the world of education and how to use technology properly and for advancement? Who in this room isn't using technology in their jobs today? If we aren't training our students in technology, in my opinion, we are cutting them short. But it's not just technology, it's the culture behind it and what is the purpose of it and how is it to be used properly.
Well said. Principal D'Ambrosio?
I'll speak to what I know in Charles County. Our superintendent has implemented K-12 computer science education. Technology is a tool, and that's the way we look at it. It's not going to change what we do. Our job still is to empower students and make them global citizens. But technology is nothing more than a tool that we use, but it is a tool that we take seriously in the use of education. But you can't do that based on, what my colleague said earlier. We have teachers that, they're in the profession 30 plus years, and teachers that just started. The teachers that just started, they're like, why don't we have an app for that? And whereas the teachers that have been here for 30 years are like, what's an app? So, we have to deliver that professional development to use that tool to benefit our students. But that's something in Charles County, Maryland, that our superintendent's well aware of and is pushing, and everyone's hands are wide open and accepting. So it's a tool.
Director Kipp?
Well, it's been 17 or 18 years since I was in the principalship, so I've watched this from outside the profession, inside the profession, but not practicing. And one of the differences that I see is that compared to when I was a principal, teachers and principals today are perceived to be accessible 24/7. And that wasn't the case for me. And with the principals and teachers that I've talked to, I have a daughter-in-law who's a teacher, that's a game changer. That is a game changer in terms of how am I expected to interact with all of the parents when they want me to interact with them. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in schools, and that's what they're describing. That's one thing that I think, wow, I don't know if I could have handled that. That's something.
Principal Lamar?
Outside of really making sure that we are implementing our social media usage administrative procedure, because that's important, we need to make sure that we are representing ourselves and our district in a positive light. Outside of that, I think technology in its usage is really important. The way that you can differentiate your instruction for your students in your classroom is amazing. You can have students research. You can have a flipped classroom. You can have students talk to students in other countries, in other cities. So just the accessibility of information is a wonderful experience that I didn't have as a student because technology wasn't what it is today. My teachers are excited about it, and anything that can get them excited gets me excited. They want to go and find and get masters in educational technology. Some of them have become Google certified trainers. And so I see the usage of technology increasing. In my school, we have a one-to-one in third grade. We have about 7 or 8 Chromebook cards. We have a one-to-one iPod Touch in kindergarten. So there's technology all over the place. But the truth of the matter is we have to prepare our students for it. All of their assessments are online. And so we have to expose them. And to be completely honest, I had a 2-year-old who knows how to find whatever app on you. I don't know how she knew how to find YouTube or how to find Play-Doh on YouTube, but she did. And so we have to embrace technology and understand that it is a tool, just like my colleague said. We have to teach digital citizenship because that's important, but our students can do wonderful, amazing, phenomenal things with technology, and our teachers, once they get excited about it, they can do phenomenal things as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
One of the things to me that this points out is how quickly we have changed our expectations about how technology is used in the school. And without professional development to guide that, we're in real trouble. And so we've gone from don't bring that phone into this classroom to 2 years later, don't come to this classroom without that phone because we're using it. I mean, it is like lightning speed that we have changed the practice of teaching related to technology. And how can you expect teachers to change without giving them some time to understand how to change? It's a great example, great question. Great example of really what brought us here, and that was talking about professional development. And it's critical for that one. Sorry about that.
Oh, not at all. That was great. Next question.
My name is Rich Long. I work with the Learning First Alliance. I have an Air Force officer son who's very, very good at what he does. Even though he's very, very good at what he does, he gets 12 to 20% of his time on professional development and training. Question, how much of your time is spent right now on professional development and training? And what should it be?
So we'll start with Steve.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wrote down earlier, from notes that I was thinking through, education, sometimes we set that off as like, that's a separate profession, and it's really not. Would you here's a question, if anybody who wants to cut funding, my question I think would solve all these issues. Do you want your surgeon not to have any professional development, And do you want your investment person to not go through professional development when he's handling your money or she's handling your money? So that, we smile about that, but it's not any different for principals and educators. I'm very blessed, like I said. I work in a state that encourages professional development. I work in a school system that encourages it. But still, even with that, very small percentage of it is devoted to professional development. Again, I'm very fortunate. We have our state conference coming up in November where we will have about 1,000 administrators coming from all over our state, and we will take them through some of the things we're talking about today, one-to-one technology and other things. But I will tell you, I am also mentoring young principals, and I would say the amount of professional development, because they just don't have the time or the resources, I would say less than 5%. I would say in the area of 2 to 3%. And I'm very concerned for my young colleagues because without that professional development, I'm afraid that they are going to not be able to transition into the leader they need to be.
Thank you. Lewis?
I would agree. It's a single-digit percentage. It is a very small amount of time. I think that professional development takes place, and it's because of some of the things we've all said earlier, the many hats we have to wear. Professional development is another one, but we really need to focus it so it's more job embedded. And not to pontificate or anything, but we're always compared on a global scale of where American education is. And if you do the slightest bit of research, the professional development that is offered in the top performing school in the world in Shanghai, we're talking, these teachers come in and they have 2 mentors, one for pedagogy and one just, to get them through the normal access of the day. So, and they teach for maybe 10 to 12 hours a week. The rest of the time is spent developing their craft. And that's done all the way up the pipeline. The principal, teacher in the building, the principal, the same thing. They went through all that to become the principal. So I really think we need to not only maintain, but actually increase the level of Title II funding and embed our professional development. And then I think Maryland's ESSA plan is a great start for the way it's written and how we can do that.
Gary?
It's difficult for me to answer that personally because I'm not a principal in terms of the amount of time. From a state association, it's the majority of what we do. And we tend to do it on weekends. Many of our professional development workshops, and we have a number of cohort models that last 2 years long. A lot of them are on weekends because we can't get principals out of their schools. So I would add that if you're adding the weekend, then maybe your percentage grows a little bit.
Thank you. Monique?
I don't want to quantify the actual amount of professional development that we receive, but what I can say is on a principal level, once a month, because I'm a principal mentor, we actually pull together and work with our novice principals, and they receive professional development. We receive professional development through our monthly principals meetings. We have systemic principals meetings, and we also have meetings based on our levels. So we have elementary principals meetings as well as middle and high school principals meetings where that's continuous professional development. We have a School Leaders Institute. We have our APs, our novice APs, APIP1, APIP2, they meet monthly. There are assistant principals meetings. So when we meet, that's our job embedded professional development. In terms of my teachers, they have collaborative planning, and through our collaborative planning, they're constantly growing and developing themselves. And then once a month, we have something called Guiding Coalitions where they are picking a specific area to focus on, and monthly they are really working to develop themselves as educators. So I don't want to say how much that is, but I do think that my district does afford us the opportunity to grow and develop professionally as administrators.
Okay. So as we wrap up this conversation, I would just like to add, serving as a principal has been my greatest joy, especially to serve as a proud principal in Prince George's County Public Schools. As we continue to engage in these types of authentic conversations, it's clear that we know where success is, right? When we talk about funding, when we talk about what works, especially when you look at the Department of Education's What Works Clearinghouse. You look at a bunch of proven practices. When you talk about building up that pipeline, you look at the Teach to Lead initiative through the Department of Education that really builds upon teacher leadership, that shows you that you can lead and it doesn't have to be in a principalship, but there are other ways to lead and shape the direction and the climate and culture of your school. There are so many things that are out there that is just evidence that people know we know what we're talking about, right? And when people keep saying, well, this is the problem, and you have a group that will consistently, resoundingly say, here's the answer. I think that the thing that needs to match that is the funding. When we talk about what works, there's also the what we need to make it work. And there's a funding component that is essential that, essentially when we talk about technology, the ever-changing landscape of technology, it changes every second. The phone you bought yesterday is obsolete today. So when we talk about making sure that we are being innovative, creative, and engaging, that needs to be matched with dollars. And if appropriately used, Title II Part A funding is that lever that we need to make the changes in education. So with that, I thank you so much. Please give my panel a round of applause. And I will turn it over to, I'm done. And with that, I believe we're done. Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to talk to any of our panelists, get any information about their districts and any of the resources that are available. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, and thank you.